Welcome to the new episode of r/Askreddit. What is your can't eat at everybody's house horror story? Told my dad my sandwich tasted like fly spray at my grandma's house. He didn't believe me. 2 days later I catch my grandma spraying the benches clean with the $2 fly spray you find at the cheap store. Dad figured it was safe to make sandwiches straight on the countertop because they looked clean. I dragged him over to see, and he apologized and took my sister and I for fish and chips for lunch. This is hilarious, but how do you eat a sandwich and think this tastes like fly trap spray? My mom used to make sugar cookies for Christmas every year and always used the exact same large Tupperware container. It wasn't used for anything else throughout the year and sat on the shelf as far as I knew. Turns out my dad had kept his weed in it because the container was airtight. I was probably 15 to 16 at the time, took one bite of a cookie and immediately made a face. My mom asked why and I said these taste like pot. And my mom instantly turns and gives my dad the filthiest paint peeling look I've ever seen. Funny memory, lol. I was thinking she would be asking you how you know what weed tastes like. Busted. My crackpot aunt served us a lovely tray of deviled eggs, complete with very old paprika sprinkled on top. So old, in fact, the many weevils mixed in it were dead. Oh man, I'm so sorry. This reminded me of when my gram made chicken soup. I raised my spoon for the first bite and noticed that the rice had character trays. I dropped my spoon and my parents and sister were horrified why I reacted. I pointed to my bowl and told them that the grains of rice had legs and little eyes. My gram starts yelling that I'm being picky, a pain in the etc. That's when my sister and my parents all noticed the same thing. We were all like, oh my god, but we were trying to be very gentle and laugh it off like, oh gram, you must have accidentally picked up rice that you didn't realize this happened to. She has shelves in her garage where she keeps extra food like canned tomatoes, boxes of pasta, and rice. She swore up and down that she had just bought the rice, but all of us knew better. I felt awful that I ruined dinner. My mom stirred around the soup, took some out with the ladle, and sure enough the entire batch was chock full of bugs. Every single story I'm reading is adults not believing children. I wonder how often children make up nonsense about food. Like really. I visited a friend's house who was living with his mother. She asked if I wanted a coffee and I said I would. Upon getting to the bottom of the cup and taking the last few gulps, I found there was a used band-aid stuck to the bottom. Never ate or drank there again. I feel like I would have just started crying on Feo. I'm pretty sure I would throw up the moment I saw the band-aid. I was babysitting a kid in a pretty dirty house. I was told to wake him up, supervise bathing and changing clothes, and feed him. I was welcome to whatever was in the fridge. Okay, the house and his clothes were filthy. Then, when I opened the cabinets, floods of roaches poured out. There were roaches in every open box and container. I took him back to my house and returned him later that day. I hope the boy ended up in a better situation. I found out CPS got involved shortly after. OMG, that is so sad and gross. I hope that kid is okay nowadays. I was gonna complain about raisins in the potato salad, but the other comments on here are scary. OMG. When I was a young kid I stayed over at a friend's place and his mom made veal or something with goddamn raisins in the meat somehow. It was so nasty I never forgot it. My mother-in-law fished around in the green bin, compost bin, with her bare hands, didn't wash them, wiped her garbage juice hands on the tea towel, and then went back to prepping the salad. She also got horrifically offended if I didn't want to eat at her house. Oh nah. My partner always wipes his dirty hands and or mouth on the tea towels and puts them back for doing dishes. I think it's disgusting, but he thinks it's fine. Had a Christmas party at work. Someone brought pasta salad. The bowl was full of cat hair. Some hairs in the salad looked like pubic hair. I wanted to throw up immediately. Unfortunately I'm bad at keeping a poker face. Oof. That reminds me of when I was a kid, probably 10 or 11, and was having dinner at a friend's house. She had 2 golden retrievers and her house was covered in dog hair as you'd expect. Her mom made saucy chicken wings for dinner and was bringing them to the table when she dropped them on the floor. Not wanting to waste them, she just scooped them up off the kitchen floor and told us to just pick off the dog hair. She made us eat them, and I was too polite to say no, plus she kind of scared me. So gross. My first boyfriend's parents invited me for Thanksgiving. I came over a few days before Christmas, and all the same dirty dishes from Thanksgiving were still in the kitchen. I passed on coming over for Christmas dinner, so they had the same dirty dishes for almost a month. OMG, sounds awful. Right? I feel bad if I leave them after a party and am too hungover to do them the next day. I went to a friend's house after school. He was going to teach a group of us to play D&D. We got there, and his house was disgusting. I'm not the neatest person, but the carpet hadn't been vacuumed in forever. Clothes were all over the place, and dirty dishes were stacked everywhere. I tried to be polite, even though the place reeked, but at some point he was like, "Who wants snacks?" He picked up a bowl that was crusted with stuff, splashed in some water, wiped it with a towel that clearly hadn't been washed that decade, and poured chips into it. Then he asked if we wanted to stay for dinner. We did not. Had a neighbor like that. Only went inside the house once. They had tons of pets, and they all just all over the house and no one ever cleaned it up. Just piles of cat and dog poop in every room. They walked right past it like nothing. When I was a kid, Christmas Eve was always celebrated at grandma's. I always got sick afterwards. Like, "Merry Christmas, you're going to puke now." It wasn't until I was all grown up and helping her out in the last weeks of her life that I learned why. She did not believe in expiration dates on anything. Yeah. Before anyone realized my mother-in-law had dementia, she left the Christmas ham out all night. She saw it the next morning, put it back in the refrigerator. I was the only person to eat leftovers and had a major case of food poisoning. Even worse, spending an extra 6 days at their house while recovering. Did realize, however, how wonderful my boyfriend was though. I had diarrhea with violent vomiting every few minutes at the peak of the illness. I told boyfriend to sleep elsewhere because there wasn't anything else he could do. In my feverish haze, sometime around 3 AM, I didn't realize I had backed up the toilet. When I flushed it, all of it came back up as I was vomiting in the trash can. My it was literally swimming across the bathroom floor. I was so sick I couldn't clean myself. I texted my boyfriend. He put on his waterproof hiking boots, came down, picked me up, put me in the shower, and cleaned me up. Helped me put on fresh clothes, and got me to bed. He spent the next couple of hours cleaning the bathroom. That's when I knew he loved me. Edit to at, I can't believe my most liked comment is about diarrhea. Wasn't expecting such a little thing like that to blow up the way it did. I've enjoyed reading everyone's funny relatable stories and sweet comments. To answer the big question most have been asking, yes, we are still together. Have been for years and years. We are not married, but very happy just as we are. We share a beautiful home together, with some rescue kitties. He has never brought up the incident, probably because he's repressed it due to the trauma. Not even for brownie points. Thanks again for all the love. Please keep sharing your stories. They're hilarious. Sleepover in the 5th grade at a friend's house. Her mom made chicken in Vegas. I took a bite of chicken and something was off. Flipped it over, and the backside was coated in black dog hair. I don't know how people think this is okay and think someone won't notice. OMG. My grandma made me a food phobic from a young age. Whether it was ramen with moths floating on top or chunky milk in my cereal, it just scarred me for life. Dinner at her house was always a fight. Not eating her food was not an option. I'm not sure why that was the hill she would always choose to die on, because she was an amazing grandma. Other than this, expiration dates aren't a thing. If the cheese was moldy, you cut it off. I think living through the Great Depression and raising kids in poverty changed her mindset on food. I mean, obviously she's doing something right, because she's 91. She must have the immunity of a superhero. That describes my grandmother. She lived through the depression and had a hard time throwing food out. I used to help an old neighbor out grocery shopping. I'd drop the bags at her door and she'd give me a check for the amount of groceries. She'd give me homemade cookies once in a while, chocolate chips. I didn't ever eat them because one time I caught sight of her apartment. It was a large studio, a small kitchen and TV and bed or couch, and about 20 cans of cat food, half eaten, and 1 million flies and small maggots in diff stages of growth. Dishes crusty food stuck to them, and a wall of empty beer cans. After I saw that and got a whiff of her apt, I started helping her taking garbage out and putting groceries away, cleaning out her fridge, and making sure her cat was healthy. A couple months later she got COVID, ended up at rehab facility, and passed within 2 weeks. Some people need help and a little company. You're a good human. There was one time, I was eating at my boyfriend's house at the time, and his grandmother was cooking food. She wasn't feeling well and everyone offered to cook that night, but she insisted. Usually, when she's cooking, she doesn't like anyone in the kitchen. Thing is, the kitchen is the first thing you see when you walk into the apartment. So I came from the store to help pick up a few things for dinner. I walked in, saw her blowing her nose with her hand, and then used the same hand to massage seasonings into the chicken. She cooked the chicken and the rice. I didn't eat that day and just said I ate before I came over. Some of his family members thought I was rude, but I didn't have the heart to tell them, since they also didn't like me very much cause I was shy. My grandmother was raising baby chickens in her kitchen. They were in big box, but the entire house smelled really bad. She had made some special lime jello stuff specifically for me because I had liked it as a kid. Nope, thanks, but not interested. My mother was like, but you're going to hurt her feelings. Too bad. So sad. That kitchen was nasty. A girl I was interested in at the time had cats. I came to her house one day to pick her up for a date, and he had a large sack of rice open in her pantry with the pantry door open. One of the cats hopped out of the sack of rice, and she just casually laughed at it like, oh, they are always getting into things. Came over the following weekend, that same sack of rice was in the pantry, and I could hear one of them tussling around in it again. We stopped dating sometime after that, but anytime she offered to cook for me, I immediately pivoted to taking her out to eat instead. Those cats probably used it as litter. My mom thought that the turkey would dry out if you cooked it for the recommended time. We even used the turkeys with the popping thermometers in them, and never once did I see it popped. As a kid I just thought it was a turkey button. Then she would eat the outside of the turkey that was cooked, because she liked the white meat and skin like ma'am. There would be a lot more white meat and less pink meat if you cooked it longer. Subs and I always got sick after Thanksgiving, and she'd tell us it was because we were fat and ate too much. Wasn't until I moved away for college that I found out turkey wasn't supposed to be pink. I honestly thought I was just allergic to turkey. That is the wildest story I've ever heard. Glad you're gonna be eating white turkey now. My mom tells one about going over to her Aunt Virginia's house. She, her parents, and siblings are sat around the kitchen while aunt cooks, and my mom cannot figure out why no one else is having any of this incredibly delicious bread that's on the table. She's on her third slice when aunt steps out to do something else, and my mom is told by her brother to go look in the flour bin. Absolutely filled with moth larvae. Aunt Virginia had been losing her eyesight for years. Of her parents not to warn her not to eat the bread. Like what? You know the bread isn't safe, so you're not eating it, but you're fine with letting your daughter have 3 slices? We have a 73-year-old co-worker who's a legit hoarder. I'll get to the point without going too far down this rabbit hole. Years ago we had a potluck for our crew. As lunch is coming up, we are all getting cleaned up and putting all the food out. I go to the bathroom to clean up, and I see Ron walk out the stall as he's buttoning up his pants and walk right out. I go to our lunch area and I see him in line, and first thing he does is grab a handful of chips and put it on his plate. I grab that bag and hand it to him. I tell him, these are yours now. Long story short, I tell my boss why I did it and he agreed. After that I never participated in potlucks on the same crew as Ron. We have a chili contest every year at work around Thanksgiving, and I've stopped participating in voting for it because I want to know who's I'm eating before taking any. I work with some great people, but I wouldn't eat it or anything from their house. Strangely enough, the guy I absolutely despise, I'll gladly eat his chili because he is clean and well kept, and I know his house is. I also work with a bunch of people who don't wash their hands after using the bathroom in any capacity, and we've secretly kept a list so to avoid any potlucks where they take food or to get food before they do. I had to stay at a friend's cousin's house for a few days. I wasn't allowed to stay in my own house due to abuse allegations, and she was nice enough to take me in. The thing is, the house was hoarder level. I slept on the floor which was covered in clothes and a 3-inch layer of cat hair. I hope it was cat hair. She fed me macaroni and cheese, but I distinctly remember there being green crusts on the noodles and the fork being dirty. Not wanting to be rude, I picked out what noodles I could and claimed I wasn't hungry since I had to leave my home. The milk she offered me the next day was cottage cheese, and I politely phoned another friend to ask if I could sleep on their couch because I was finding bugs on my body. OMG, I'm so sorry. Worked as a cleaning lady. There was one woman who had schizophrenia. She was kind, but damn. That house was the stuff you see on TV shows. They should send a team of professionals. She had a rat cage, and I've had pet rats myself, so I asked her about it. She said he had died. I took a closer look and the water in the bottle had black spots all over it. The water had gone bad or something. I've never seen water go that bad in my entire life. The rat was gone, luckily, but the whole cage was still in there, like the rat had never left. Decided to do some dishes. They were piling up quite a bit, but she had no clean sponge or clean towels. She also didn't knew where they were. There was a spot on the floor where 2 flies were feeding themselves off. As I vacuumed, they flew away. She asked me if I liked some coffee, and just automatically I said yes, before I realized what I had done. Right before she handed it to me, she said, I wonder when I last cleaned that thing. Must have been about 2 years ago. I said I forgot I had a cup of coffee at the previous house and shouldn't drink too much caffeine, and excused myself. I graduated high school at 6 feet 10 inches tall, but weighing only 120 pounds. That's not skinny, that's emaciated. The food prepared by my biomom was so bad that it wasn't providing me with the nutrients or calories I needed to survive. I went off to college, where I had to cook for myself. I wasn't allowed to cook at home because my father insisted that cooking was women's work. Not only did I discover that food didn't have to be burnt to a crisp, flavorless, or boiled until everything was grey, I also discovered that food can be made to taste good, and using things like salt, or pepper, spices, or various condiments can make it taste amazing. The freshman 15 likely saved my life. The thing is, I don't think that my biomom was even aware that her food was that disgusting. Whenever we went out for dinner, which was more often than what my father wanted, but he was the one that insisted on going, she did nothing but complain about how the food was undercooked, practically raw, or too spicy to eat. When she went to other people's houses, including her own extended family, she would criticize them for doing it wrong. When she watched them cook anything, she would often end up refusing to eat their food because she watched them ruin it when they cooked it. We never had guests over to eat her cooking. Ever. I went with my then fiancé to visit some relatives of his. We arrived at their place to find that they were serving up the leftovers of this noodle dish, pancit, that had been their fare the night before. Now if you know anything about handling pancit safely, you'd know that it goes rancid real quick in hot weather. I could smell that it had gone off, even from the doorway of the house. One of the older relatives knew this too, and bundled some of us to get McDonald's nearby. Those who insisted on eating the pancit got a bit sick later that day. What a mess. Had this happened to me in the Philippines, they left it out all day, and when we got back to their house, they served me, and I ate a couple bites so as not to be rude. I became so sick that night, vomiting and diarrhea. I vowed to never do that again, no matter anyone's feelings. My parents owned and rented a few mobile homes back when I was a kid. For many years, this older couple and their 2 boys lived in them. We would hang out after school on the weekends. We were good buddies, but I could never have a sleepover at their house. For months I begged, and eventually my parents said yes. That night we made microwave pancakes. We went to their bedroom with our food, and eventually I sat my plate down to go to the bathroom. When I returned, my plate was covered in cockroaches. Apparently they had lived in multiple of my parents' trailers, and they had to spray and fumigate every time they left. My dad said that I just couldn't get the message and apparently had to learn the hard way. These people were very nice people, and my parents apparently helped them out whenever they could, hence the infestations in multiple units. Still today I think about how many roaches probably crawled all over me that night. Bonus story, my grandpa was lifelong friends with this guy, like grew up in the slums together. He always told me horror stories and would never go in his house. Well, my grandma used to babysit for this couple, and one day she, for whatever reason, had to drop the baby off at my grandpa's friend's house so his wife could help her out. When she came to pick the baby up, she said this: they had a dog chained to a piano leg inside the house. It had ran a circle in the carpet and damn near pulled the leg off. There were ketchup stains on the ceiling where someone had smacked the bottle and it shot ketchup out. Apparently when she got there, the lady couldn't find the baby and it had somehow gotten under a pile of clothes. I slept over at a friend's house when I was in middle school. It was really dirty and trashed and also had this bizarre, powerful funk I couldn't identify, but I didn't think much of it. At the time I had a bad habit of getting up in the middle of the night for a midnight snack, so I went into the kitchen cause they had left the leftovers from dinner out, and a kid don't know any better. I hit the lights and man, every plate, dish, item of silverware, etc. on the table was absolutely covered in cockroaches. They didn't even run when the lights came on cause they knew they owned that house. I somehow managed to turn the light back off and retreat to the living room before emptying the contents of my stomach and curling up in a ball, imagining every stray or other sensation to be bugs crawling on me for the rest of the night. This is why I have a serious phobia of bugs. When I was a teenager, I went to a new friend's house and his dad made burgers for us. Essentially just rolled up a big hunk of hamburg and threw it on the grill for 10 seconds. It was cold draw in the middle. That wasn't even the worst part. I was staying over that night, and at one point I asked to use his computer. He forgot to close his current search window, and it was full of CP. I waited outside for 3 hours, until my ride showed up, and called his brother the next day about it. What happened to his dad? IDK, but the former friend tried to call me a couple weeks later to apologize, because his dad told him to. That's what the voicemail said. I never picked up my own parents, or sisters, or any of my brother's houses. They're all the same: dirty dishes in the sink with water backup, has dead flies in it, mold growing around everywhere, fly poop and mouse poop on everything. The food they cook isn't fit for human consumption, nor would I let the dogs or hogs eat it. The parents and sister took care of my grandparents for a while at my grandparents' house. That ended when I showed up unannounced and found mouse poop in all the cupboards, dirty dishes and food spoilage in the fridge. I notified the right people and got the parents and bio sister ousted. They brought in a new woman to cook and clean. My daughters and I did a military grade field day on the grandparents' house. We scrubbed human poop, baby, from the ceilings and walls, vacuumed and steamed floors, annihilated the kitchen and bathroom with chemical warfare levels of bleach, tossed out a bunch of old and spoiled food, and hand washed every dish in the house. To this day is something I want to kick my dad and mother's over. They were incompetent caregivers. The grandparents loved the new girl and the cleanliness she brought with her. Grandmother was a neat freak and always kept a clean, lived-in house. Grandfather tried his best. My own parents and siblings are slobs of their own making. Grandmother tried and the cleanliness only stuck with me. Alright, so maybe the US Navy drove sanitation into my head as well. I was working as an interior painter during my college years. This middle-aged man put a container of strawberries in the sink, then proceeded to trim his nose hairs over that same sink with an electric trimmer. He rinsed the strawberries and then offered me some. What the Saw Linda from Billing on that show Hoarders. Her kids had her do the show, not realizing she had a very legit career outside of her home. She stopped coming to work. I stopped participating in potlucks. That's so sad. It really was. To us, her work people, we were like super bummed Linda disappeared, but we totally understood why. I always felt like her kids kinda did her dirty. I had a small circle of co-workers that I was friends with, and we would occasionally hang out together outside of work. One of those co-workers was Lisa, a middle-late 40s woman who was single, but had a couple of little yappy dogs and several cats. Lisa invited several of us over to play board games and said she would cook us dinner. We got there while she was still cooking and were standing around the kitchen talking to her while she finished up cooking. We all about our pants when she took the spoon out of the pot of spaghetti sauce she was cooking, tasted it, and then casually held it down for her two little yappy dogs to lick the spoon, and then stuck it right back in the pot of spaghetti and continued stirring it like it was the most normal thing in the world. I'm not sure how the rest of them got out of eating it, but just before we were supposed to sit down and eat, I faked an emergency call from work and said I had to run into the office and deal with a problem and got the hell out of there. I was always busy every time she invited us over after that and never ate anything she ever brought to an office potluck. When I was a kid, my sister and I were great friends with the kids that lived next door. We mostly played outside and would spend time at whatever house we felt like at the time. I went to their house early on a Saturday once when they had just finished breakfast and were cleaning up. They were pouring the milk out of the glasses the family had been drinking out of right back into the milk jug. They had 6 kids, so I guess they had to be frugal. I never ate there, not with the thought of backwash milk in my head. My first job was hostessing in a restaurant where they would bring a decanter of water and some cups to the table when people sat down to eat. A few weeks in, I saw a coworker pouring water from the drinking cups back into the decanter and serving it to another table. Immediately dry heaved and went running to my manager. Apparently this coworker had been doing this for the almost a year she had worked there and saw nothing wrong with it, and no one else ever saw her doing this. She was baffled as to why we were all freaking out. So yeah, if I'm at a restaurant with table water, I now politely decline. My in-laws leave food out on the table and then expect you to eat it until the dish is gone. Like, on Monday lunch might be a pork fried rice. The leftovers stay on the table and you eat more for dinner. Then overnight it stays on the table and you eat it for lunch again. They do the same thing with seafood, chicken, any dish, any weather, it's staying on the table. And if for some reason food is left over after 2 days, instead of throwing it out, my in-laws will add it to the new dish they're cooking. For instance, 3-day-old chicken that's been on the table during summer will get added to a stir-fry. This is very common in some cultures due to limited refrigeration or none whatsoever, but it's like they won't get with the damn times and use the resources we have these days. Growing up for us it was soup or stew in a pot, kept on the stove, reheated multiple days until it was all gone. I vomited weekly, and it was treated like a normal thing, that I was puking my guts up and had a fever all the damn time. And you know what I'd get for puking? More heated up old soup or stew and some 7-Up to make me feel better. Like they were trying to kill me. All I wanted was to sleep off the illness after puking, but I'd be tortured once more with another dose of foodborne illness. Okay, I think this is the first comment I've read in this thread that has made me think these are actually literally going to kill someone. Leaving meat open at room temperature for multiple days before eating it is beyond horrifying. A whole family died from eating 3-day-old pasta salad that was left out of the fridge for less than a day. You do not with food safety when it comes to leftovers. A lady I knew told me a story about how they were at a potluck and halfway through one of the other ladies started talking about how she uses a crock pot to autoclave toys and menstrual cups. No one was able to get her to clarify it wasn't the same crock pot she brought food in. The way to clean menstrual cups is to boil them, but I bought a $3 pot at Goodwill and only use it for that. My cooker is safe. Not my story but my husband's. Before we got together in high school, he had to live at a girlfriend's house because his dad was in jail. He was making breakfast one morning, eggs and toast, and one of their dozen cats jumped up onto the counter and proceeded to pee into the toaster. Of all the horrifying I've read in this thread, that one actually made me laugh. My narcissistic mother would fake illnesses and not leave bed for months. There was also a portable toilet next to the bed. She hadn't showered in months and has highly questionable hygiene habits. Last Christmas my now husband and I were visiting and she said she made the meatballs. I brushed it off because she's highly delusional and typically my dad cooked anyways. Turns out my dad brought her the raw hamburger and supplies to make the meatballs in bed to make her feel better. She made the meatballs with her dirty hands next to the portable toilet. I found this out months later. We are now no contact for other reasons. But I'm thankful my husband and I will never risk eating her sketchy meatballs again. This story violates my nose just thinking of how it would have smelled in there. Yuck. This is a family story. It happened when I was a baby, so no memory. It was a family Thanksgiving potluck style. Everyone brought one dish plus a drink to share. One of my aunts by marriage brought mashed potatoes. She let it slip that, while cooking, she ran out of milk. So instead of having her husband run out to try and get more, she used her own breast milk. No one touched it but her, my uncle, and the older kid. After that it was the rule of thumb, if she made it, don't eat it. Mind you, after my grandma died in '07, we haven't had any family holiday get-togethers like that since, so no worry there. Yuck. I breastfed to kids and have high lactose milk. Even my own babies think my milk is gross, unless it's fresh from the tap lol. I can't imagine unleashing it on unsuspecting adults. Have you ever went over a friend's house to eat, and the food just ain't no good? I mean, the macaroni is soggy, the peas are mush, and the chicken tastes like wood. So you try to play it off, like you think you can, by saying that you're full. And your friend says nah, he ain't finished at all, he just been polite. That's bull. Neighbor invited me and couple friends over for pan-fried steaks with mushrooms. He answered the door wearing the same swimming trunks and torn, filthy t-shirt as the day before and barefoot. Those trunks with their netting inside really hold on to swampers and bow sweet stink, and it was obvious he hadn't showered or washed the clothes. No dish soap on counter. No hand or bar soap or toilet paper in bathroom. Someone notified him about lack of TP or soap and he said he just jumps in the shower after he poops. There's no soap in the shower either. I didn't eat. Everyone else spent the next 24 hours vomiting into trash buckets while they ejected from the other end on the toilet. Later he confessed they were mushrooms he'd foraged himself. They all got lucky the idiot hadn't served them something deadly. No idea what they were. Was it food poisoning or a toxic mushroom? IDK, but don't you eat at people's houses unless you're certain of their food safety precautions. Some people are too stupid to be trusted around food. Went to a barbecue on my uncle's farm decades back. We used to have Christmas and Easter dinners there, so I didn't think anything of it. Unfortunately, the guys were doing the grilling, not my aunts. Lots of farm guys don't have the greatest hygiene, and I think whoever made the burgers had been in contact with some biohazardous matter, if you catch my drift. By the time I got home, it was coming out both ends. Couldn't eat for almost a week. I heard a lot of people ended up ill. I don't touch anything that isn't pre-packaged if I'm there now. Or hell no, ain't no farmer in there right mind gonna be shoveling and then cooking without washing. After knowing what kind of diseases and parasites animals carry, hell, now it's standard practice to sanitize your boots and hands between animals or pets. Listen up, because I've got a story that'll make you swear off potlucks for life. Meet Carol. She's that office angel who brings cookies on Fridays and rescues the printer. We all love Carol. Carol decides to host a dinner party, and, let's be honest, we are all expecting this to be the food equivalent of a TED Talk, inspirational and enlightening. We get there, and Carol unveils the main dish, her world famous tofu casserole. Now, I'm no food snob, but this thing looked like it had already been eaten and returned to the plate for round 2. Being the brave, or stupid, soul I am, I took a scoop. First bite, and it's like my mouth got ambushed by the ghost of expired vegetables and tofu that had given up on life. It's so bad, even the dog won't touch it, and this is a creature that eats its own vomit. But wait, it gets worse. I'm trying to power through when I hit something crunchy. I dig it out and find no a whole acrylic fingernail, complete with chipped glittery nail polish, looking up at me like the Eye of Sauron. Thank you.